Let's tell them what they need to hear, because everything you say is on the public record. And that's important, because that's going to help us then get them to start crafting some solutions. Okay? And that's what we want. We want solutions. That's what this is ultimately about, is making changes so that nobody ever has to go into a shelter and face harassment and violence again.
But the reality is that there is a high rate of homeless LGBT people here in San Francisco. And as a member of the LGBT community, I know, seeing what the experience of many of them, is that their housing status is directly linked to their LGBT status. And in light of that, I think that we have to be very vigilant about this issue. A study of transgender people in San Francisco that was conducted by the Transgender Law Center and the National Center for Lesbian Rights found that 64% made less than $25,000 a year, and that 1 in 5 did not have stable housing. 35% of homeless youth are LGBT, and many times you have youth who are kicked out of their homes because of their LGBT status. The Coalition on Homelessness has recently interviewed, actually in 2007, interviewed 215 homeless shelter residents and found that over 70% of those respondents that were identified as transgender reported having experienced some form of abuse, over 70%. There are a number of anecdotal pieces of evidence that we have heard about. There is the family of Spanish-speaking youth, gay male, where the family kicked him out of the house because he was gay. He ended up in a city shelter, from what we hear, and he was beaten up for being gay.
Eric and I'm a gay combat vet. I spent some time in the Middle East. After coming home, I went to work with the Department of Corrections as a correctional officer. Due to severe PTSD, I became homeless. I was unable to function and found myself on the streets. I slept under a bridge in 7th and Howard in Harrison for many, many months. I wound up in a shelter through the Home Without Clinic, which is an amazing place. But when I checked into the shelter, I left all the fears I had being a gay citizen. I felt in San Francisco, I went to the shelters, I was ready for help. My first night there, I was somebody that had knew me from the streets, told other people that I was gay. I was called a faggot, and I was trying to be pressured to get my bed up to some people that were sitting in chairs. After 3/4 of the night there, I chose to leave because I felt unsafe. So I went back on the streets, picking up all the fears I had, and stayed back on the streets for quite a long time until I was able to get off the streets. Yeah, I personally don't think it was anything the staff could have done differently. From working in CDC, I know that the people of sexual orientation are preyed upon in the Department of Corrections. That's how I felt in the shelter, that I was preyed upon. I think it was just a too out-of-control environment. Things, people of gay, all walks of life. I just felt the staff had no control over the situation, and they were just doing the best they could. But it was absolutely a very scary situation for me as a gay person to be in.
Pero también están diciéndote que
I have suffered very much abuse in the shelters, especially verbal abuse, including from other Latino men in the shelters. And it's a no-win situation, because if we're harassed in the shelters, then our only other option is to go out back on the street, and people continue to bother us there. It is not necessarily that people want to have sex with us, it's just that people continue to harass us.
I'm Dr. Catherine Dulake, and as a woman, I left Salt Lake City to further my career in the social service field and outreach in San Francisco. I found myself victim to theft in Palm Springs, where my laptop, wallet, identification, and all money for my booth were stolen, leaving me with a savings that has thus been depleted. Never would I have thought a person of my status would have ever found herself wondering where her next meal is coming from, having to find showers, sleeping in her car, to landing up in a shelter where privacy, dignity is taken away and treated as a prisoner of poverty. It doesn't matter about one's education or worth or work background. Becoming homeless can happen to anyone. There is no manual field guide that says welcome to be homeless, No key party that reassures you that it's okay to be living on the streets. For many, as with myself, it happens in a split second. With no warning, it is a scary time and place filled with unknown.
I went to a shelter when I first got here to San Francisco, and when I went into the shelter, I got called a faggot. Went to the shelter staff, and they did not do anything about it. I think that we need a LGBT shelter for the people that are like me.
About a year ago, I ended up homeless in San Francisco, so I went and talked to the shelters and presented to them, I'm a transsexual male, where can I go and stay where I can be safe, because I don't really want to be on a woman's floor, I don't feel safe there, but I also don't want to be on the men's floor, I don't really feel safe there. And when I went and presented my case to the people at the shelter, I was met with giggles and grins, and they really had no idea what to do with me. They'd never, I guess, encountered a trans man in the shelter community, though I find that hard to believe. But they acted as if they hadn't. They had no protocol to follow. They had nowhere to sort of resource me out to find out where I could get help. And so I ended up just going to whatever shelter they put me in. And when I got there, I talked to the shelter staff. Again, when I talked about being a transsexual, they just sort of laughed at me, and they were not willing to engage in an actual conversation about it. So I went on and stayed in the shelter. There was no safe place for me to shower. There was no safe place for me to use the bathroom. Even to sleep felt like very unsafe on that floor, especially considering the shelter, the people that were monitoring the shelter floor knew that I was transsexual. When I reached out to them, they had they had laughed at me and not, helped me out, so that made me feel even more unsafe. And then there was also what felt like a constant threat of sexual assault or harassment by all the other tenants of the shelter as well. And my mental health, I'm on SSI, I need mental health help. And being in that shelter it just made my mental health deteriorate so rapidly. I was constantly on the verge of suicide.
My name is Anak Soul, and I'm in my 14th month of being homeless in San Francisco. I've been here for 3 years. I moved here from Texas to get better HIV care, and in general, being LGBT, I don't have family that cares for me, and I'm looking for it here in San Francisco. I was staying in the shelter at MSC South. I was assaulted verbally by a gentleman repeatedly calling me a faggot. I walked to the floor monitor and asked them to handle it. They just shrugged, and I was very upset, and I explained to the gentleman that it is the same. It just made me feel extremely unsafe knowing that there's nowhere you can go to if somebody is verbally assaulting you. I was moved to the bottom floor where you're kicked out at 6 o'clock in the morning and not allowed to stay during rainy days and not allowed to stay during holidays. This caused my health to decline, and I got pretty much life-threatening illness because of this. I had a gentleman that would push my bed away from him because he said, quote, I keep trying to climb up into his bed because I was coughing so much. Obviously, if I had that extra 2 hours of rest, I might have been able to be better. And I just think that if we had a shelter run by HIV-positive people or LGBT people, we will be compassionate towards our own people more so than other people in the community.
My name is Alana, and I came here from Tennessee about 13 years ago. And I have lived here on and off, and I came to San Francisco because of the prejudice I faced in Tennessee, and because I had no rights in Tennessee, no matter what. If someone hit me, I had no rights.
I, being a gay African-American male, formerly displaced, can attest to some of the brutal treatment that is given to a person of color in the shelter system. I do think that it is time, being the city of San Francisco, where we are the sanctuary for most gay and gay, transgender, and bisexual people, that the youth be honored and have a place that they can call their own, and a shelter that is sensitive to their needs and is ran primarily for them.